Is fear a feeling or is fear a thought?
I think it's a thought. I think it's a feeling. I think it's a behavior. More than anything, it's a habit.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode of the Jeff Heilman Project, and it's gonna be a scary one, so be careful. Just kidding. No, my daughter Nessie and I are, she more than I, wakes up in the morning and says, FF, Mom, FF. And so she's addicted to Fear Factor.
Fear Factor.
And shout out to you, Joe Rogan.
Joe
Love
Rogan.
you. My daughter, my
Might not have a podcast without Joe Rogan's
7-year-old right now is enamored with young Joe Rogan and has decided that Fear Factor is like her favorite show. But we cannot, I don't let her watch it by herself. And I make sure that she does not. What does
The
he
stuff
say?
you have to eat on that show.
Well, he says like the things,
Ugh.
these situations. He has to say it before don't do this at home, and the little disclaimer and stuff. And she's got that memorized, and so I make sure like don't do this with your friends. Although she did have, we had guests over last Saturday, and hi Chris and Brianna. I know Chris watches
I think they're
sometimes
late 20s.
Okay, so she did have their son climbing a tree for the first time. And I asked them, I said, you don't have trees? And he's like, no, the branches are all too high. So yes, she's loving, and in the spirit of Fear Factor, I have a couple questions for you about times when you've been scared. And so we'll go through those. But before we go through those questions, how have you been?
Good.
You and Madeline went to Fresno and got to see Morrissey in concert. So
Yeah, that was great.
Doubly shouting out to that.
Dude's 65 years old. He's been touring for 40 years. Like, what's not to like? Who cares? Did he play good? Who cares? It's Morrissey. He did a great job. But he did. He sounded great. He looked like he was in great shape.
I could not tell you a single song that...
The Queen is Dead is one of my favorite albums growing up.
But...
Yeah, with the Smiths. So I love him. He sounded great. The band was great. The venue was awesome. It was the Warner Theater in Fresno, which is about 2,500 seats. It had gold leaf, hand-painted, hand-carved Art Deco ceilings from 1928 construction.
But the company was exquisite.
And I got to hang with Madeline, my mini-me.
I know. We call them
23
mini-me
years.
because they like the same music. They like to dress in all black.
Yeah. Yeah. And Madeline had her emo mod. They used to call it mod.
Yeah.
But the emo makeup on, white.
She would totally, I mean, she would be
so fun.
If you've watched the episode that we recorded with Madeline, or if you know Madeline, if you don't know her, imagine 1960s black turtleneck, black pencil pants with a beret, and sitting in the back in a jazz club with a whole cigarette-filled room, doing poetry with
long,
red, yeah,
curly, dark red hair,
our
not
daughter.
like Irish red, like.
That's
Ruby
our daughter.
red.
She's like a jazz cat. I can see her
She's
like
a jazz cat.
just
Yeah.
in a little
so fun.
in a little poetry reading in
So we
France.
got to drive 3.5 hours out to Fresno. Went to the Morrissey concert. Stayed the night at the DoubleTree there in downtown Fresno, and then drove back yesterday after I had calls all morning. So, yeah, a Morrissey concert. I've wanted to see him my whole life. I've never seen him in concert before, and I've seen everybody else. I've seen The Cure. I've seen Depeche Mode. I've seen REM.
Didn't you get to see UB40 or something?
Never saw UB40. I never saw UB40. I never saw U2.
Ace of Base.
But no, I don't know that they were still touring when I was a kid, but I did get it. I got to see Rush. I got to see Maroon 5, Counting Crows, Toad the Wet Sprocket.
Well, you hung out at Shoreline Amphitheater quite a bit. Because of golf, were you like? I would imagine you would have seen who was coming and stuff.
Yeah, we saw who was coming every time I went to work.
Every time you go.
I got to see the Eagles twice at Shoreline. That was fun. That would have been '93. I know I'm dating myself there, but
Y'all, if that's not a testament of trash to treasure, that entire amphitheater.
yeah, it's built on a dump. It smells
It
like
is.
poop.
But
Solid methane.
and when it's a hot summer night,
Oof,
they
and
say that
wind's
the
blowing
methane
just
comes
right.
up from the grass or
Yeah.
something. I don't know. I have never been to
How bad's the
Shoreline.
methane smell? So bad you hardly notice. Right?
Well, wow, we're getting disgusting. So, in the spirit
Yeah.
of being disgusting and fear factor, I asked you, I did give you a little
You
heads
gave me
up
a heads up a little bit
about what we
before.
were going to ask you. And I think
Not
that
gonna
we
get
should.
the shock and awe
The
on
shock and
camera,
awe.
but-
We're going to go through two questions because it's really about, Charles Dickens said it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. The scripture says, I've learned how to abase live with little and live with much, because the bottom line is like no matter what, you're gonna get through it. You're gonna get through it. It's gonna be okay. You're gonna make it. And so the two questions are: what is the scariest thing that you experienced and that you would like to share? What is the scariest thing, one of the scariest things that you experienced being broke, being poor? And then what is one of the scariest things that you experienced being rich? And so let's maybe address the being poor first. Like what would you think is one of your most, if you could tell a story to the kids and the people listening?
By the way, I never felt poor until I met you.
You're welcome.
I did not know what poor was, and I did not know what not having money felt like until I needed to have more of it than I had, which is pretty much.
Well, you did tell
you helped
me
me raise
that
my
growing up
standards a
that
lot.
you knew what a smack was. You knew what what
they were. It was all I had.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But you recognized that there were name brands and there were not name brands.
Yeah, I recognized there were name brands, and I could not afford any of them. The cool people had Z Cavarici pants and Guess jeans, and I got Smacks from Kmart. That was where we shopped.
Were they actually called smacks, or is that just what we call them?
What are we called? This isn't like Bust a Bucket
that's
or
a brand.
McWhacket. No,
it was a
Smacks was the brand. Smacks jeans from Kmart.
It said it on your jeans.
Yeah, but that was back before people smacked people on the ass.
I'm
there
gonna
wasn't a correlation.
need to see a picture of
No,
through archive
Smacks.
of what a smack jean.
They were called Smacks.
Did they have back pockets? Did they look
they
like
had
Levi's?
Pockets. They looked just like Levi's, except
Okay.
they were $5 instead of $35.
Okay, so you knew. That's what I'm saying. Is you had
I
some
knew they were.
consciousness.
I always wanted to buy brand name stuff when I was a
okay.
kid because I am marketed to.
Yes.
But I don't know what brand these are. I know this is a Polo.
Yeah.
Those are
Olakais.
I know that. This is not a Rolex. I know that. But I think brand awareness and understanding that I needed to make more money to support a family. That didn't really kick in until I was in my 20s.
What was the scariest thing that you went through being broke?
The scariest thing I went through being broke was probably not held at gunpoint, but I had a shotgun pulled on me at face level at about 6 o'clock in the morning when I was delivering newspapers. That's the most visceral
Okay,
fear.
but for Mark's benefit, how old were you when you were delivering newspapers?
For Mark's benefit, yeah. My buddy Mark loves that we had a paper. I think that's the funniest thing ever. It was the dumbest thing I could have done. I mean, I worked 7 days a week for about $800 a month of newspaper money if I didn't get docked for missing any houses.
And you drove 60 miles.
And it was 60 miles a day. It was like 68 miles a day. It was the paper route nobody wanted for North County Times. It was 110 newspapers. First day I did it, it took me 5.5 hours to do it, which means I made after gas probably about $1 an hour. But, $40, $50 an hour, or if you get up to $5 an hour and you're working an extra 50 hours a week or an extra 30 hours a week, you'd make $175 a week maybe after gas.
And didn't you have to bind your own papers? You had to rubber band your own papers or put them in a bag?
Yeah, rubber band or put them in a bag. I just did
so
the
you
bags
show up
because
I remember going along a ride along one time and it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. We show up at 2 a.m. The baby's in the back seat.
The papers are there
I'm
in
pregnant,
a folded thing
again.
with the plastic string on it.
And we show up and you got
I'd spend about an hour.
All the other guys and you
taking the
guys are like
papers.
sharp elbows to get your papers because everybody's fighting to get their papers.
Everybody's getting their papers.
And then you what happens? Well, walk me through how you end up with a shotgun in your face.
Well, my tire blew out because I didn't understand car maintenance in the beginning. That's the best way you can learn about car maintenance is just go through cars like you go through underwear, which is what I did for about 10 years. And you realize you can't just run your tires indefinitely because eventually they'll blow out. So I had a tire blowout, and this is back in the back country, in the horse country of Poway. It was 10 miles from town. And I'm not going to walk 10 miles. So I just go to a ranch. There was a guy that had a ranch there. There was a house, and I rang the doorbell. And they greet people differently in the country. And I just I hear the of a shotgun being loaded. And I was like, this isn't good. And then I see a door crack open about 2 inches, and there's a barrel. I can just see the...
Is it? It's like 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm imagining
it's probably
like
6:30, 7
early.
o'clock.
Okay.
But it was in the summertime, so it was light. It was already light out, but not very light. And I never saw the guy. I just see these 2 barrels poke out from behind the door. And he basically said, who the F are you and what are you doing here? And I said, I'm your paper delivery service. I have a flat tire, and I wanted to see if I could use your phone.
Yeah, because we didn't have cell
We didn't
phones.
have cell phones. You wouldn't have had cell phone coverage out there anyway. I mean, it's ranch folks, big ranches, 50-acre, 100-acre ranches out there. So there's no cell phone coverage back in 2000? Wouldn't have been. I don't think. Maybe they would have. But yeah. So that was.
So did he walk me through it?
Alarming.
Did he lower? Was he
Never
diffused?
lowered it. Never lowered it. He did understand what I was doing. And he said, you can go out to the corral. There's a phone out by the corral that you can use to call.
Oh.
And so he did let me use the phone as soon as I was not a threat.
Yeah.
And I never did see the barrel drop. He just closed the door, and that was that. So that was probably the scariest thing about being broke. That, and then when the guy that was on meth broke into our apartment, because we lived in a bad neighborhood.
I think his name was Joe.
Jay.
That's right, Jay.
And I had to figure out how to talk him off the ledge because I didn't have any firearms in the house. So I couldn't make him leave, and he was high anyway. And he was in there going through the freezer, probably looking for ice.
Okay, so I got to tell my half of the story.
Your side of that.
We just didn't have a policy of we were so young and married and in love. We were living on the love train. We had 2 kids we had 3 kids.
We had 2 kids. Madeline wasn't born yet.
Okay, so we had 2 kids and I was pregnant again.
Yeah, this would have been 2001.
And we didn't lock our doors. We didn't lock the front door. We lived in an apartment. We were on the bottom floor.
We had a front door that was facing a community of other people.
It was facing other apartments.
60 apartments.
Felt
we were
secure.
all neighbors. Everybody knew everybody.
And
there was a courtyard in the middle.
And I'm laying in bed, and I hear that sound and
going through the ice.
When you have to crack the thing in order to pop the ice, because we made our own ice in the ice trays, and so you got to twist it. And I'm hearing this going on in the kitchen, and I'm laying there thinking, because I'm a light sleeper.
Yeah.
I'm like, my brain, and I'm laying there, and I'm like, okay, Jeff's next to me, check. And then I'm thinking,
our 2 kids are like 1'3".
I know. I'm like, okay, Jeffrey he's not
big
tall enough, and Joseph's
smaller than Jeffrey.
Someone's in the kitchen.
Who's in the kitchen getting ice out of the ice maker? Yeah. And our kitchen, and this apartment is probably, our whole apartment was probably smaller than this 12 by 12 booth that we're in.
And Jeff's a heavy sleeper, and I'm like nudging hard. Jeff, someone's in the house.
Kitchen. Which, if you're a dude and you've got a pregnant wife with 2 kids, and you live in an apartment the size of a small car, and your wife says someone's in the house, that is
getting ice of all things.
Yeah.
And I mean, for whatever reason, I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel non-peaceful. It was actually that it felt pretty peaceful.
Jay was harmless. He was
in
just
the
high.
and maybe it was because they were getting ice. I mean, like
Yeah.
obviously you're gonna stay a while. I don't know.
Yeah.
But then I do remember you finally woke up and I just stayed in the bedroom. I didn't want to go out there, but
No,
he had.
I didn't want you
I
to go out
think
there.
he probably was just going around the buildings,
Looking for open
trying
doors.
all the doors.
Well, he
and-
was running away from the police. He thinks, at least that's
Oh.
what it seemed like. He was harmless. He wasn't armed. I've been around people that are high most of my childhood, and for the most part, they're harmless. They're just not aware. They're not sober. They're not thinking clearly. And so, I just basically I didn't have a gun. And I wasn't gonna try to use violence first. If it escalated, that's one thing. That was
part of being a black belt.
yeah.
I mean,
the whole
but
thing
the
about
psychology
being in
of talking
karate,
people down.
I was in karate for 6 years, and the whole thing is you train so that you'll never need it, so that you can talk yourself out of
Yeah.
it if at all possible. But if you have to go and smack somebody, you can, but that's not your first or your second or your third move. Like, you should be trying to de-escalate stuff as much as you can. So I was trying to de-escalate stuff, and we did, and basically come to the realization that he was running away from somebody, found an open door, was fleeing, and happened to show up in our apartment. And I just let him sit on my couch for a couple hours and sober up, and then I took him wherever he wanted to go. I dropped him off somewhere. He was fine. But
Yeah.
that was alarming in the beginning, because it's just the sense of uncertainty of what's
and
going to happen.
I can remember feeling, that feeling of being violated or feeling like you're violated.
Yeah,
because
it is violating.
Because
It's total
an
violation.
unwelcomed visitor is literally in your house. This is not a metaphor.
Yeah, this is a stranger. This isn't a buddy coming over for some sugar.
Yeah.
This is somebody breaking into your house, and you don't know which way it's going to go. So
But
that's
and so as we
dangerous.
talk about, the scary things of the reality is we got through it. You were able to maintain your cool and your calm, de-escalate situations, and being broke. We would not have found ourselves necessarily in those situations had we had money, and yet we find ourselves in those types of situations, rich or poor, which is why I want to talk about like what the scariest thing, because there are a lot of people that are paralyzed by the thought of succeeding as much as they are about being paralyzed in their poverty. So removing blockers and removing fear, so that I can say, evidently, fear is not a factor for you, Jeff, because you
Fear's
can
been a factor
succeed.
for me my
And the
whole
most
life.
recent episode that we just watched of Fear Factor, it was the couples episode, season 5 or something like that, and it was for $1 million. And the one guy, they had the camera on him, and he's freaking out before the final stunt, and the girl's like, "Why are you freaking out?" And he's like, "Well, I'm freaking out in case I win, and I'm freaking out in case I lose." So it's like that feeling of paralyzingness, which comes upon every denomination.
everybody's had
everything.
it. Everybody's
What
experienced
is
it.
one of the scariest moments you experienced
After
as having money and being wealthy?
certainly losing money is scary. Betting or investing in the stock market is terrifying. Losing your job when your expenses go up to match your newly increased income, and then you're like, I don't know if I could get another job like this. That's scary when you're out. You have a little bit of imposter syndrome. When I lost my job at IBM in 2015, or I knew I was going to be losing it, going into consulting, starting that business that we were able to run, and it paid our bills for a year. Doing consulting with Cisco, that was scary because I didn't know, like, they were paying net 70 terms. Like, you do the work for months, and then you finally get a deal, and then you have to wait another month or two to actually perform the work, and then you can't invoice them until you've done the work, and then you invoice them, and you still have to wait almost 2.5 months to get paid. That is a huge cash flow issue. So that was scary. But we made it through that. I think taking promotions in some cases was scary for me, doing jobs. I'll tell you, going to take the Oracle job and actually being in charge of being a sales rep, like an actual legitimate sales manager at Oracle, that was really scary because I'm like, I don't see myself as a sales manager. I don't know. And I was 45 years old and I didn't think I could do the actual legitimate quarterback job. Come to find out, I was better at it than most. Um, and I was actually horrible playing tight end or wide receiver in those roles. I was way better at the quarterback job. And I was that was one of those things that was like, man, why was I afraid of this? The job pays twice as much. It's twice as easy. I'm 10 times better at it than most people that try to do that job. I'm really, really good. And I got promoted 3 times in 2 years. And by the end of the 3rd year, I was running the biggest accounts with the biggest teams for the most revenue, for the largest, like 10 and 20 and $30 million deals. And I was quarterbacking the whole thing. And I created project management software and processes and standard operating procedures that, I mean, I'm like thinking this is what you probably got to do. I don't really know because I never did this job before. And they're like, nobody does this job that way. And you need to be doing bigger stuff. So that was kind of irritating that I allowed fear to control, keep my career growth down.
Is fear a feeling or is fear a thought?
I think it's a thought. I think it's a feeling. I think it's a behavior. More than anything, it's a habit. Stimulus comes in and you convert it into, oh, I'm afraid of this, I'm not going to do it, or I'm afraid of this, I'm going to procrastinate, or I think this is going to be painful.
In closing, you played professional golf, and some people in sports and in life have successfulally figured out how to take fear and reframe it as
it's not a figuring. It's not a figuring of
adrenaline.
That's exactly right.
That's what I'm saying. Is how do you flip it?
Clinical psychology terms, there is the answer is I don't know. Actually, I know what it's like to actually go through it. Certainly, narrative and how you frame things has a lot to do with it. I don't really know. I'm actually just now pushing through fear and getting a lot of just successful ideas that come by having this concept of feeling like I can't fail. Because I do. I feel like right now I can't fail. Like there's nothing I can't do at this point. But that's only been within the last maybe year or so. And part of that came from frame control. Part of it came from habits. Part of it came from just continuing to get through really difficult times and having successes and victories in a variety of different ways. But from a clinical psychology perspective, it is a known fact that your sympathetic nervous system, which takes in conflict in the form of fight or flight, eventually, if you spend enough time under tension, and in a boot camp situation, it's about 8 to 16 weeks, somewhere in there. If you're constantly under pressure, your nervous system will make an adaptation, just like your muscles will make an adaptation to weights. And your parasympathetic nerve, I promise that's the biggest word I'll use on this podcast. Your parasympathetic nervous system will take over, and that moves the way that you interpret stress from fight or flight to what they call rest and digest, to where you actually begin to metabolize fear, metabolize conflict. You'll lean in and you eat it up, and you get to a point where you can't even really get into flow state until you have enough adversity that matches the skill set in how your narrative and how your training goes. And so when we look at Chris Voss and the work that he did on the FBI hostage negotiation stuff, or Oren Klaff for frame control and the eradication of validation-seeking behavior, all these training programs that I've done in order to be able to learn how to handle conflict, plus time under tension, plus that parasympathetic nervous system kicking in, has in the last couple of years basically put me in a position where I don't feel like failure is even a possibility, because I know that I'm just going to keep coming back. And there's just a relentless pursuit. It is. It's relentless that whatever we want, we can go after and go take it down. And that if there's adversity in getting to that goal, it's that adversity is starting to be interpreted in my nervous system as feedback in what you need to change in order to get to the goal even faster.
Well, honey, evidently, I think fear is not a factor for you. We do not need to send you packing.
Don't need to send me packing.
And
I love that.
thanks.
That was his catchphrase.
I love that. Yeah, I know. Gotta send you packing. We actually use that regularly.
It is funny. Yeah.
Anyways, thanks for tuning in, everybody. We, as always, appreciate you and thank God for you and are praying for you. But God bless you. Have an awesome rest of your week.
See you on the next episode.
We will see you on the next Jeff Heilman project.
Thanks.
Bye.